WDW Today is being sponsored by All Star Vacation Homes. And on your next trip to Walt Disney World, you're going to be planning. You're going to say, I got my park tickets, I've got my ADR set, but you know what? Don't overlook where you're staying. An All Star Vacation Home offers a lot of great amenities like, your own private pool, full kitchen, game room, movie room, bedrooms for every single person. Yeah, these are some of the typical amenities you'll find at an All Star Vacation Home. And the best part, it's not expensive at all. Check them out online at www.allstarvacationhomes.com.
This is Walt Disney World Today. Give us 5 minutes and we'll give you the world.
It's Friday, August 13th, 2010, and this is episode 759 of WDW Today. I'm Matt Hochberg of StudioCentral.com. Joining me on today's show is Len Testa, co-author of The Unofficial Guide to Walt Disney World. And Len, it's Friday the 13th. Are you, does that excite you?
Not as much as Saturday the 14th will.
Saturday the 14th, I get to experience something I'm sure you're very jealous of, Len. I'll be riding Star Tours over and over and over and over again at the Last Tour to Endor meet.
To Endor, yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah. Your favorite. I know you wish you could be there.
Yeah, I wish you could be throwing up all over your shoes. Yeah, go ahead.
Also joining us on today's show is Mike Newell of Mouse World Radio. And Mike, I think in Len's honor, since Len listens to your station more than anyone, he listens for like 14 hours on a row, I think you should play Star Tours on an endless loop all day long in Len's honor.
Exactly.
Well, I'm not going to go that far, but I will be playing the anything Star Wars that I have will be playing on the Radio 1X and the iPhone app. So
nice. Just
in one of those, I wish I could be there with you kind of things,
Nice. Well, I'll be listening on my iPhone then in line. Also joining us on today's show is Mike Scopa, a senior feature writer and blogger for allears.net. Welcome, Mike.
Damn.
Language.
Oh, Circle of Life.
Yes.
No. Yes. Yes.
Explain it.
Yes.
Who says it?
Timon says it, right?
Pumbaa.
Pumbaa in the end of the scene. Okay, yeah, that's right.
He's looking at the Hoover Dam and he yells out, "Damn!"
Yeah. Scopa challenged us at the beginning of right before the show. He's like, "I've got a one-word intro and none of you are gonna get it."
Well done. And we have a special guest on with us tonight. It's Tracy Cook, author of Kids Tips for Walt Disney World, which can be found online at vacationfieldguides.com. Welcome to the show, Tracy.
Hello. I'm glad to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on here. It's about time we start talking about kids on this podcast after 5 years. So yeah, it's time to talk about children finally. Being Walt Disney World, the adult destination that it is. Sarcasm there. Swing and a miss. Okay, let's move on. Tracy, we brought Tracy on as the author of Kids Tips for Walt Disney World, and obviously, Tracy, your book deals with helping people who are bringing their children or someone else's children to Walt Disney World. Let's start off with something. First question I have for you is, if someone's bringing kids to Walt Disney World and they say, Tracy, I can only remember one tip that you're going to give me. What's the most important thing that you would recommend to people about bringing their children to Walt Disney World?
I would tell parents or people who are renting kids to take a day off while touring. Mm-hmm. And because I have not learned that myself, at least have a day when you get home to recover from your vacation. So I think that's one of the most important tips.
Interesting. When we were thinking about this topic, bringing kids to Walt Disney World, I haven't brought any of my own children to Walt Disney World, but, Len and Scope.
Wait, you've got kids?
Well, that's for the courts to decide, Len. I'm not saying anything.
I'm sorry. That's for the judge to. Okay.
That's right. But I was going to ask you, Len, you've been to Walt Disney World before you had your daughter and since. Talk to us a little bit about what your experience has been bringing children to Walt Disney World.
It's definitely a slower pace, and you definitely have to do things like eat meals and have regular bedtimes and nap times and things like that. There's no, driving all night, staying at the park all day, waking up and doing it again type thing. There's definitely a need for rest and for food and for just generally stopping and relaxing and smelling the roses. That's different than going as as an adult. Also, they tend not to be able to do the electric slide when you're at clubs and stuff because they're small and so you can't really rely on them to be good dance partners. But other than that, yeah, it's
not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad.
So, Tracy, what about you? Tell us a little bit about your personal experience with bringing children to Walt Disney World and how it may have even shaped your book.
On my first trip, we brought our two boys Walt Disney World, and I had pestered my husband to go. He didn't want to go. He doesn't. Well, why does anyone want to go to Walt Disney World? So we stayed at the Caribbean beach, and I think my husband ended up sleeping on the floor because I was go, go, go the whole time. The kids were cranky, and it was a pretty bad experience. So we did do a do-over, and that's when I actually bought the unofficial guide, and that really helped our touring.
Ding.
And yep, we took time out to rest. And really my book actually stemmed not from my own kids, but from my students who
Really?
go to Walt Disney World during the school year.
So what do you tell them? You say, listen, Johnny, you're taking time off from school. That's not good. But while you're down there, be sure to grab Fast Pass and be sure to take afternoon breaks as well.
Well, absolutely. And make sure, a lot of times they bring me something back or no. I love to talk to my students about their trips.
Let me ask you something about your trip that you just mentioned, the one that didn't go so well. What do you think was the pitfall or pitfalls that you experienced that, you've learned now obviously to avoid?
I think as parents, we do all the planning for the trip.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the pitfalls that I did is I didn't let my kids do any of the planning. So it was my agenda. And that didn't go over so well.
Yeah, Scopa, you're big on empowering other people in your party, both children and adults, about being part of the planning process, right?
Yeah, and I think that what Tracy's book does, and the subtitle of her book is Touring Advice by Kids for Kids. And I think what the book does is it does exactly what we want to do. We want to prepare the kids for their first trip to Walt Disney World. We want them to have a frame of reference. We want them to be prepared. We want them to have a realistic idea as to what they're getting themselves into. And I think what this book does is it prepares the kids, and it lets them know what to expect. And it's filled with tips from children. So the advice that is in the book is from a child's perspective. And I think that goes a long way towards preparing the kids for their first visit to Orlando.
That's really interesting, Tracy, that you included tips from other kids. Tell us about that process, because, Len has a tough enough time getting, me to go do something for him for the book, let alone, asking, a bunch of kids to help you with, sharing their tips to touring the parks.
Well, I had a vision. I drive an hour to work each day, and February of last year, I had this idea that, hey, I should write a book. And what do I know a lot about? I know a lot about education and Disney. So I actually wrote an educational adventure, and that's coming out in the fall. And I thought for fun, I would include some kid tips in that book. So I posted on a forum that I was just looking for tips from kids, and I gave an age range. And within a week, I had over 8,000 tips submitted. So
wow. Because
of that volume, I felt like I had to do something with all those tips. So that's where this book came from.
Interesting. So what do you think was the most, I'm not going to ask you what the best tip was. You can leave that in the book. What was the most surprising tip you got from a kid?
One of I guess a favorite of mine or surprising was listen to your parents on vacation because you don't want to be punished. So something along those lines. And I thought that was just from the kid's point of view and very true.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's logical, certainly. So Tracy, what are some interesting ways that you can make the parks, more engaging for children? Especially, I think the biggest problem, and this is just outside looking in kind of observation, is the waiting in line aspects, because you can't fast pass everything. So how do you prepare your children for the lines, and how do you deal with the lines?
There is a ton of iPhone apps now or even regular telephone apps that I think help, as well as, basic I Spy games. My next book coming out would be great to do in line. It has different things like that. We used to have the boys journal while they were in line sometimes, or if they had math, we'd review math facts, which I know isn't super exciting, but if we went during the school year, that was important. There's just so much to see in the queues. I think that really helps.
Okay. Now, Len, let's. I wanted to ask you what about planning for a trip to Walt Disney World with kids. What do you think is essential for park touring? You mentioned already changing the pace of a trip versus going with just adults. But tell us a little bit about your thoughts on how to successfully navigate the parks with kids. I mean, maybe even be specific to the parks themselves, like Magic Kingdom, the studios, that.
I think the best thing that you can do is to try and divide the bigger parks, so the Magic Kingdom and Epcot, up into 2 days of touring, because that gives you time to nap in the afternoons or to rest in the afternoons.
Mm-hmm.
You also don't have to rush around as much. Plus, the wait times are lower if you can split up Tomorrowland and Fantasyland, for example, on 2 mornings each. I think the same thing sort of applies for Epcot. Rather than having to cross the park and then walk around all of World Showcase in one day, doing half of each park, the left side or the right side on various days, I think is a major win there.
Interesting.
Probably the biggest tip I can give. 2 days if you can do it. And the downside of that is you have to have the money to afford, extra nights in the hotel and extra park tickets and stuff like that. But if you can do it, it's a great tip.
Cool. Now, Scopa, you brought your kids when they were younger to Walt Disney World, and maybe you still even bring them to Walt Disney World to this day. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on bringing kids to Walt Disney World, and we've heard some of your thoughts on Walt Disney World, but
Well, I think that the most important thing, I think, first of all, I do support what Len just said. I think that trying to do too much is asking for trouble. I think that concentrating on maybe the first half of the day, especially during the summer months, is important. And then, thinking about allocating 2 or 3 days for each park, just to make sure that you're not going crazy with commando style and then doing it at night, maybe for the fireworks or whatever. But I think that one of the things that was always important to me was to try to explain to my kids exactly what we were going to see for their first trip. No matter how hard I tried, and no matter how detailed I made it, and I had them, I showed them, videos, and I showed them all kinds of books and everything. It's very, very difficult to, as an adult, to explain to a child what they're going to experience. And again, I think that if you had a child speaking to another child, just as Tracy has in her book, I think that goes much further than an adult, because we can't understand fully what their comprehension is all about. And I'm speaking as an educator too. It's very hard to hit that target all the time. So I think preparing them is very important. And by preparing them, I mean giving them a realistic idea as to what they're going to experience, and also at the same time saying, now we're going to have to think about this. We're going to have to think about taking a nap. We're going to have to think about, breaking the day. We're going to have to worry about long lines, giving them a realistic expectation as to what they're getting themselves into. And if you do that, then when you get down there, it's going to be a much more enjoyable vacation for the whole family, because everybody will be that much more prepared.
I think you make some great points, Mike. I was actually going to ask Tracy something about you. You reminded me, Mike, about being prepared and everything. Tracy, one thing I think a lot of parents have apprehension for their children is the characters, and being able to, not be afraid of them. Certainly, what do you tell parents who are worried about their kids, being afraid of the characters and dealing with that sort of a situation?
I think it depends on the age. I think if they're very young kids and they're afraid of the characters, then maybe they should just skip the characters that visit. I also think taking your kids to other places. By me, we have something called Chuck E. Cheese, and they used to have like a big mouse, or I don't know if it was a mouse. I don't know what it was. Some big creature, some dressed up creature. And if you can see how they react around those creatures. If they're going to cry when they meet Santa Claus, then they're probably going to be afraid at the parks. So I think definitely take the lead from your kids.
That definitely makes sense. Let's talk a little bit about the book here, Tracy. You talked to us a little bit about your inspiration for the book in terms of you wanted to write a book about something, and certainly Walt Disney World spoke to you given your affinity for the area. How much of your personal experience was involved in the book?
Well, all the tips, my kids only have one suggestion each.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they're full of other suggestions and things I should write about or everything else, but they each got one tip. But all the other tips are actually from other kids in the book.
Interesting. How did you go about getting the tips from the kids?
I posted that I was paying them. I posted that I was just looking for tips, and I was very surprised how many parents were interested. And I had a number of parents who were surprised by what their kids said, and I thought that was interesting. And so I just posted I was looking for tips, and parents, with parents' permission, their kids filled out a short survey, and the tips that said more than go on Space Mountain, the ones that were more
tip.
Yeah, well, the tips that were more in depth made it into the book.
Well, I think we're gonna have to steal that Space Mountain tip for the unofficial guide.
Sounds great.
Go on Space Mountain. Nice.
Wait, what was the first word again?
So you made the book. What was, this is something I guess you could ask almost any author, Tracy, but what was the most difficult aspect of making the book for you?
Oh, probably doing it during my real job. But aside from that, aside from that, I really wanted to stay true to what the kids said. And so I didn't want to overly edit their comments. And so while there's slang and other things I might not use in my own writing, I really wanted to stay true to the age of the child. And the kid tips in here are from ages 7 to 15.
Okay, so that's a good question right there in terms of what the age range that you're including in this book. Is this a book, Tracy, that's meant to be read by kids or by adults, or maybe even both?
I definitely think both. I mean, the book is for or geared towards kids, but I learned so much myself. I mean, when to smile when you're going on certain rides because they're taking your picture. The best places to sit if you want to get wet or you don't want to get wet on Splash Mountain. Where to find the best character meals. I was just very impressed with the tips and the quality of the information.
Interesting. Okay. Mike?
Well, one of the things I wanted to mention about the book that I didn't expect to see in the book was that there are actually kid tips. I guess I'll call them kid tips on all of the resorts, and there's a paragraph or two on each resort. And Matt, you'll also be interested to know that under the holidays and special events, there is a tip on Star Wars weekends.
Nice.
And I just think that's a real good addition to the book. I didn't expect to see that, Tracy, and I think that's important, because if you've got a child, you've got a family going on a vacation for the first time, and sometimes the kids want to know where they're staying, this will give them an idea as to what to expect.
That's a good idea.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, Tracy, tell our listeners where they can find your book if they're interested in picking it up.
They can find the book at most online retailers, so like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and places like that. And they can also get it online at my website at vacationfieldguides.com.
That's right. It's Kids Tips for Walt Disney World. And, of course, the author is Tracy Cook. Tracy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And that's going to do it for us today. And don't forget that this episode of WDW Today is being sponsored by All-Star Vacation Homes. And you know what? If you're going to be planning a trip to Walt Disney World, and if your kids could write their own book about where to stay, if they could go in the future and then come back and write it now, they would have told you, you know what, All-Star Vacation Homes are pretty cool. I mean, look at it this way. The great thing about All-Star Vacation Home is you're going to have your own private pool in most houses. You know what that means? The only annoying kids in the pool are your annoying kids. So why not try out an All-Star Vacation Home and, see how it goes for you? I bet you they're going to enjoy it quite a bit. Check them out online at www.allstarvacationhomes.com. If you want to find our older episodes, read our show notes, or send us your comments, you can, of course, visit us at WDWtoday.com. For Len Testa, Mike Scopa, Mike Newell, and Tracy Cook, I'm Matt Hochberg. We'll see you on the next show.
Stupid Judy, stupid energy.
This has been a production of Mouse World Radio.